whenever you don't own your own part, you will continue the pattern of dating losers. Yeah, there you go.
So, for everybody that doesn't know you, can you just give a quick introduction of who you are, what you're about, where you're from, a little bit of your
Sure.
story?
I live in Houston, Texas, and I'm originally from northern Wisconsin, and I'm a licensed psychologist. I deal mostly with relationships. I do sex therapy, and so I work in affiliation with a few partners at Baylor in the medical center about issues men and women have sexually, dysfunctions that are emotional based. Um, I also do segments. I am a writer, so I've written 3 books, and I do 2 segments a week on Fox 26 TV. And I do those in the morning. I write my own articles. Tomorrow it's about ultimatums, helpful or hurtful in your relationship. And I'm kind of intrigued with the Netflix show, the trash show about ultimatums and these couples that gave their partner an ultimatum and what ended up happening. And, as a psychologist, I don't think they're a good thing, but, once in a while people give them because they're fed up and frustrated in their relationship. And they want to make a demand that their partner just can't go along with. So you have to take the consequence if you give an ultimatum.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I know I've probably done that in the past.
Yeah, you should come on. I'm going to do a Facebook Live about it tomorrow night. You should join me.
Yeah,
That would
that'd
be
be fun.
awesome, Christian.
That'd be awesome.
What I didn't know you were from Wisconsin. What part?
I'm from the Stevens Point area.
Nice.
So, and I had in 2003, I think what makes all of this so poignant for me is in 2003, I'm a big runner. I work out a lot. I've run 100-mile races and 50-mile races. And I had a cerebral aneurysm that burst. And I almost died. I had like between 20 and 60 cc's of blood in my head. I ended up having a craniotomy, a clip put in my brain. But during this whole experience, I had a near-death experience, and I had a conversation with God that I wanted to die. He told me it wasn't my time. We had a discussion, and he told me that that I could do better. I started talking about all the things I had helped my clients with. I was working at a cancer center at the time. And he said, let me ask you one question. Have you ever loved anyone the way you've been loved here? And I don't know, that was a godly love. I have never loved anyone the way that he loved me in that short time. And I answered honestly, I said no. And he said, you can do better. And
Wow.
I woke up and had to go through this surgery and recover, which was quite traumatic. So it made me a better therapist. It made me a much better person, a better wife, and I think a better mom too.
I never knew that.
Wow.
I wrote a book about it, and it made, like, I was on several TV shows about it. When you see my YouTube, I've got a YouTube about it. I was on Dateline and all these shows, because it was really quite miraculous what happened. And because I was a nurse before I was a psychologist, I tried to keep the book as fact-based as I possibly could, because it's hard to do that sometimes, but I do believe that I got a glimpse of the next dimension that hopefully we're all going to.
Do you feel like that experience that it changed your perception of God or your relationship with him?
Absolutely. It happened at a time that I was feeling very separate from God. I wasn't close to him, and I didn't really like him. I was working at a cancer center with children, and I saw so much suffering. And it was hard for me to wrap my head around how any God, a loving God, could do this. But I have a new perspective of God now, and how he is so merciful and how he does love us even during those very difficult times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, God doesn't promise us that we're not going to suffer. He does promise that he will stay with us while we suffer. And he most certainly does.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's good. Wow.
That's really good.
Well, it's true. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It was a miracle, honestly. In
Wow.
more ways, it was my greatest blessing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So
So
is that what made you go into therapy and
I
try to
was
help people?
already, it's a good question. I was already a therapist, Zach. In fact, I had been working with cancer patients at a hospital in Lubbock, Texas. And I was leaving that job and then moving back to Houston a month before it happened. And so it's quite interesting that that actually happened at that transition. I'm a different therapist now in Houston than I was in Lubbock or in my life before then. I I am much more compassionate, and I'm also much more under the belief that we set our own limits. You know, God's provided us with everything we need if we stay close to him to work out any situation, but we start telling ourselves stuff that is distant from God. We disconnect with sin, and we start our mind starts getting negative, and we start feeling limited in our abilities to do what we should do, what's the right thing to do.
Mm.
And the right thing is always the thing you don't want to do. It's the hardest, you know?
Right.
It's sucking up your ego and doing what's best for the relationship.
Right. Wow. Well,
Absolutely.
we may have to have a whole separate call just about that, because that's an experience that I'm sure you could probably talk about for hours.
Yes, I could. I mean, it was incredible, honestly.
Wow.
So, and I see a lot of my own ego, and I tell people all the time that one of my favorite books is Ego is the Enemy. It's by Ryan Holiday. And
Mm-hmm.
I see little things all the time where my ego gets in the way. Because, the ego is about me, and relationships are about we. When you start getting me into mixed in with we, that's where most of us screw up in our relationship.
Yep. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Well, speaking of relationships, I figured we could go ahead and hop right into uh, the topic of relationships. And the first question I would like to ask you is, it seems like relationship talk and things like that is like kind of the hot topic now. And
Hmm.
what would you say that's the status of modern dating in our culture today? Where would you see it, and how does it look in through your lens? Because you see a lot of people in relationships. How is it looking from your perspective?
From my perspective, it looks like a lot of people are really lost. And they're lost because the way they were parented. For the first time ever, we have so many people giving advice that aren't trained to give advice. There's somebody who decided they went through a bad divorce that they were going to become a coach to help other people through divorces. And I mean, I get it. It sounds like it's feasible, but it's really not. If you're not trained and you're not licensed, you really shouldn't be giving people relationship advice, because there's a lot of people who are really vulnerable out there, and they're desperate for someone to connect with them and try to help them. And going to see a licensed therapist is going to help them in a way that a licensed therapist does not give you advice. Coaches give advice.
Mm.
Licensed therapists want to listen to you, and then they want to redirect you to things you said so that you basically can explore more, get more self-awareness of where you really are and where you went off track. Because most of us have the answers in us. It's just that it's so clouded or blinded by things other people have told us, or social media have told us, or or just we've been inundated by things that maybe we had bad parenting, bad mentoring. And so our parents, because of their negativity, they projected that onto their kids. And you're one of the kids, or you're an adult trying to go out there and establish a relationship. And you have no idea where your values are, or where your boundaries are. And and so the biggest problem I see are there's a lot of people who are lost and they don't have even an inkling of what a healthy relationship should look like.
Right.
Would you say that a lot of the modern this is my opinion, like
Yeah.
modern reality TV dating type shows where the Kardashians are giving advice about and giving these cliches to people about, well, in a marriage you got to do this, and throwing statements out there like that, and then you're like, yeah, not sure if the Kardashians is the place that should be giving America advice on relationships. What's your thoughts on that? Like how reality TV
Exactly.
stuff is
I
affecting?
think people are getting advice from influencers. And what are influencers? They're people that get paid to try on clothes or give advice. They're basically they're basically rich and they're making a lot of money by throwing people under the bus. They'll just say stuff and then because of what they look like or what brand they represent, people are gullible and they want to be liked and they compare themselves and they're like, I want to look like her or I want to live like her. They feel an attachment because they aren't really attached to their own values. When I say people to clients, I want you to tell me five of your core values. They don't even know what a value is. And they're like, is that what I like? And I'm like, no, your value is what makes you up. What is your soul? What is the
What you
meaning
stand
in your
for? What
life?
will you not bend on?
Right.
What drives you?
Exactly. Your values are things that make you strong, that you believe, like your faith, like how you feel about money, like how you feel about how you treat other people, how you feel about politics. What area does that have in your life? How do you feel about having children? What about education? Those are core values, and we got those usually programmed into us from our parents. And then as we go through, high school and college, or, right out of high school, getting a job, we kind of finesse our values. They change a little bit. We read, we educate ourselves, and then we may find a value that isn't exactly like our parents, but yet we're very committed to it. I see a lot of people, this whole thing with now transgender and
Mm-hmm.
lesbians and gays, these are, part of the struggle for them is that what they feel like they are wasn't valued or it wasn't talked about. And therefore it wasn't explored, or they felt odd or they felt awkward, like it was a secret. And when that happens, you try to hide it. And then when it finally comes out, it's so overwhelming. You don't know what to do with it.
Right. It
And
becomes your entire identity.
yes, and you know
Right.
what? We're so much more than our gender.
Right.
We are souls. You can't contain a soul. Like the soul is in the body, but we're so much more. That energy, if you've ever been with someone as they die, when the soul leaves the body, it's incredible. It is truly just a shell. And to think that that shell contained this incredible person that was just, huge. It's amazing.
One thing I've always said on here was that, and the people probably get tired of me saying this, but the devil has the same uh, tricks. He all he does is he can't make us do anything. All he can do is influence us or try to cheerlead us on to do something we shouldn't be doing. And the way he does it is the same way he did it from the beginning in the garden, which
Yeah.
is attack the identity, make the person question their identity. He
Yep.
said to
Hmm.
Eve, if you eat this fruit, you will be like God. A chapter before, God said he made man and woman in his own image already. When you look at when Jesus is in the desert, Satan comes to Jesus and says, if you are the Son of God, turn these stones into bread. Not even a full page before, God had already said, this is my son of whom I'm well pleased. So with every lie that the devil attacks about our identity, God's already given the truth of who we are a chapter before. And I think that when we look at those things you were talking about in particular, so much of that is identity. It's not, oh, this is what I like, this is what I do, this is how I express myself. No, it's so wrapped up in this is who I am, this is my identity. And when something that is not when something becomes your identity that is not wrapped up in who God is, you're always going to be led to do something you shouldn't be doing. Even if your identity is, oh, I'm a Republican, or I'm a Democrat, or I'm a this, if that is your identity, that has nothing to do with God. Your identity should be, I'm a child of God. And I think that's what leads a lot of people astray. So when you mentioned that, it just kind of made me think about that, because I think identity is such a huge thing that can make or break you. If your identity is, I think I'm broken, I think I'm a broken person, then you're going to go through life thinking, oh, every relationship's supposed to fall apart. This is supposed to happen. If your identity is, oh, I'm scarred or whatever, everything's supposed to mess up. But if your identity is, I'm a child of the Most High God, and these things happened to me, but that's not who I am. Right. When you really believe that, then you start to see, okay, I can move past some of these things, and these things aren't holding me back like they were before.
Right. Exactly. I think so many people fall into this trap where, because they're feeling like they're missing something or they're not standing out the way they should be, they are very quick to let a mental illness or something like the gender issue or the way their parents raised them, they're very willing to let that define them. And I think it goes back to remembering who you are. And you can, I've worked with people that were in terrible, chaotic families, but they went on with the strength that God gave them to really glorify and really be grateful about who they are and what they could do. They worked hard, but they did not stay stuck in that negativity. And I'm not I really believe that there's a positive and there's a negative and there's good days and bad days. You shouldn't necessarily just look at the good all the time, but it is important to track where you came from, how you improved from yesterday, and how you're planning to progress for tomorrow. And I think that's true in relationships too. People can say, well, I'm going to work on my relationship. But until you write it down, what you're going to change to make this relationship better, it's not going to happen.
Well, I think that leads into the next question, C-Love.
The question for me that I have for you is, a lot of like today you hear a lot of people say things like, he's not perfect for me. I shouldn't have to change for anyone, that sort of thing. What do you think about that? People not having to change who they are for the person that they're trying to be with?
Well, I think that the only way to form a really healthy relationship is to bring yourself fully to the table and be willing to change, not for the other person, but for the health of the relationship. I don't ever think partners should change for each other. I think they should change for the relationship, because the relationship, when couples come to me, I listen to both of their sides, but really what my focus is on the entity of the relationship they're creating. And so I'm not a big proponent of trying to make your partner happy. I think that's really baloney. It's not your job to make them happy, but it is your job to be the best you, to help make the relationship healthy. And in that, I think your partner will feel happier, usually. But happiness is an inside job. And the goal of being happy is a silly goal. The goal of being content and making sacrifices and co-creating a great relationship, now that's something really meaningful. And that's something that's going, any children you raise in that are going to be really stable kids and probably very successful, as long as the two of you are both nurturing the relationship.
Well, yeah. So kind of like rebounding off that. So it sounds like you're saying. So what do you say to the woman or the man that says, "Well, I'm not happy in this marriage"? You know, is that not a reason to divorce, or what are your thoughts on
No,
that?
that's not a reason to divorce. When people tell me I'm not happy in this relationship, I ask them, what are you willing to change to become happier? And then they'll usually say, well, it's not my place to change. Like, my partner has to change. They're the problem. And I'm like, well, not really, because one person doesn't have the power or the control to screw up a relationship. They have the power or control to make a change, but it's usually the reaction of the other partner that really starts screwing it up. For example, if your partner works all the time and doesn't give you attention, what do? Usually something tit for tat. You either get mad and complain or bitch at them, or you give them the silent treatment, or you withdraw sex, or you do something else because you want them to feel as alone and miserable as you do. And that's the opposite of what you should do. If your partner is working all the time, then you should go to them and say, listen, I feel like I'm in this relationship by myself and I miss you. And I'm wondering what we can brainstorm together to make this relationship feel more like we're both in it, so that I feel still loved and cherished by you, and you feel loved and cherished by me, and you want to be with me more. That would be a wonderful place to start that discussion. But to just react by doing something tit for tat is a terrible way to ever start or co-create a healthy relationship, because it doesn't work. It's our most human natural instinct. I mean, you probably saw your parents do that, and so
Yeah.
naturally it's got a big crevice in the brain where it was repeated and repeated and repeated. So during times of stress, you may go back to that, what you saw your parents do, but it wasn't healthy for them, and so it's not going to be healthy for you.
Hmm.
Yeah. I know I'm probably guilty of that because in those moments you just want that person to feel like how you feel, you know? So
Exactly. You really, I mean, and I think because of that, if you can own that and even bring that up, like right now, I feel so sad and alone and hurt that I really have an urge like to hurt you in the same way. But I'm not going to, because I know I love you and I don't want to hurt you, but
wow.
I want to fix this, because I think it's bad for our relationship. It always helps to take it to the relationship, because otherwise you'll start a whole defensiveness with your partner. Like they'll start, because they kind of feel, when a partner is doing the wrong thing, there's usually some guilt about it, and they probably thought about it. So when you bring it up, it's overwhelming for them. So their ego tries to get defensive, and
Mm.
that's why couples get defensive and they start fighting. You're always picking on me, or you're always saying I'm the problem. They'll turn it around so that they become victimized by what you're saying.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Why do you
Wow.
think that it is so hard for people to say, to open up, and instead of just saying, like you said, hey, it really hurt my feelings that you did
Hmm.
this. I really miss you. I really miss. Why is the response, instead of letting them know, why is it, I'm just going to get back at them, or I'm going to give them the sign. They're going to have to guess and figure out what's going on. You know, like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that from your
I
experience?
think a lot of us are very childlike at a gut level in our relationship. And also, I know women have this a lot. They're like, okay, you can't be this frickin' clueless. Like, you know what you're doing and you know it's hurtful. Like, we have talked about this because a lot of guys will say this, hey, listen, I'm just a dumb guy. Like, I don't know all this emotional stuff. This is what a guy will typically say. And it makes women mad. And they're like, you can't be this clueless. Like, I know you know that this is hurtful to me. So they respond, they just assume and they respond right away with doing some tactic that's going to get you back or make you feel bad.
So
And
what
you
if
know
the guy
what's
really doesn't know?
I think sometimes the guy really doesn't know, but because they've overused that phrase, I'm just a dumb guy. I don't, and you know, all guys will, they'll say that to me in therapy, and I'm like, please, you're a guy, but I hardly think you're a dumb guy. I think
right.
you don't want to accept responsibility for what you're doing. That's what I think.
You know
And
what's I was gonna say from a guy's perspective, sometimes I feel like guys do the same thing too. Like for me personally, I know sometimes I feel like, well, I'll just not say anything because I don't want to seem like a punk or I don't want to seem insecure. So, I'll do
mhm.
something else to try to make her mad or upset. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just for me. I feel like I've done that as a
Yeah,
guy.
well, there's always peer pressure too, right? Like, you don't want to be, like, guys don't want to be one of these guys like, oh my God, I'm going to be so emotional, or I'm going to look clingy, or I'm going to look dependent. And I don't want her to think that I'm that guy. But whenever you start kind of saying or censoring what you really feel, you're going out on a branch that probably isn't going to help your relationship. Because all therapists agree on this. The further you get away from what you're feeling at the moment, or you try to sugarcoat it, or you try to make it something that it's not, the more likely you're going to increase conflict.
Mm,
So it's much, when we say be transparent, we're really saying own the feeling. Just own the feeling and say, I feel neglected, or I feel sad, or I feel like I don't matter to you. Whenever you're talking about your feeling, right away, they're going to come closer because they're not feeling like you're attacking them. As long as you wouldn't say you make me feel
Right.
sad or you're making me feel.
Mm-hmm.
right.
So I've got two things I want to ask about that. One of them I spoke with Hafiz um, the other day about, but he hasn't
Hmm.
released this episode about it, so I'm not going to bring that one up because I don't want to mess anything up with what he's got going on.
Yeah.
Um, but I'll ask this: since we're talking about self-awareness, what do you have you come across a lot of people that will say, men and women, that will typically say things like, um, they break up, and then when they explain what happened, it's like everything was the other person's fault.
Yeah.
Everything was the other person's fault. And then they hop into another relationship, and then you see him a few months later, and they're like, what happened? Well, he turned out to be this kind of guy, and blah, 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 or this kind of woman. And what do you have to say about that? Because we have a lot of people that sometimes they come on and talk about relationship with us and their personal relationships. Sometimes they'll say things like, well, it wasn't a good fit because of this. And then it's like, this person was this way, this person was that way, and not a lot of, yeah, I messed up, I did this, or I did
Hmm.
that.
Well, I think, when people date someone and they tell me I keep getting losers, like I get into a relationship, I think it's good, and then I find out they're a loser. And whenever you don't own your own part, you will continue the pattern of dating losers. because basically you can never own your own power. So no matter what happens, you can't speak up, you can't advocate for yourself, you're not good about expressing your needs. And so you end up making the other person look inept, or they were clueless, or they always wanted their way. Whenever I meet someone who tells me my partner always wants it their way, I'm always amazed because I'm like, well, when's the last time you told them what you wanted? The answer is never. They
Mm.
they they will not do that. So if you're with somebody who never lets you know what they want, or they're so worried about losing you that they don't tell you what their needs are, you're going to screw up
Right.
and you're going to look like a big loser. They're going to call you a loser too, but you weren't really the loser. It's that they never advocated for themselves, so you just took care of you the way you should have done.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a lot of sympathy for them. I This happens all the time, and I talk with a lot of women. We go out to happy hours, and so many women say, oh, he was a jerk, or he was a narcissist. And I'm like, that word's thrown around all the time.
Oh
Yeah.
my
And I'm like,
gosh.
what does that even mean? What did he do? Well, he just always wanted his way. He always had to have, like, he wanted to be sure that people liked him. He was so charming. And I'm like, well, how did that affect your relationship? Well, I never really got what I wanted. I never got to do what I wanted. Then when I said, when's the last time you told him what you wanted and you didn't get it? And then the truth comes out. Well, I really never told him because I was just crowded out. I really am suspicious of that, because I don't know how you be in a relationship with someone for 6 months and there was never a pause when you could have told them what you wanted or what you needed. And if that happened, then there's something seriously wrong with you advocating for yourself.
Right.
Mm.
You know, Christian and Zach, one of the things that is a big part of my brand, and I think it's so important, and I think this is the crux of why people have bad relationships, is the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. Like, if you're not well with yourself, if you don't get along with yourself, if you are terrified of being alone and you need someone to fill that, then you will never be happy in a relationship. Because how you are with yourself, how comfortable you are in your own skin alone, dictates every relationship you will ever have with coworkers, with lovers, with anyone. So the most important person that you have to get well with is yourself. And we have a lot of people jumping into relationships that are like a shell of someone. They're just
Mm.
trying to hook up with someone so bad. They
Mm.
just want a boyfriend or a girlfriend, but they have no identity or no confidence in who they are. If that person leaves them, they are totally lost until they hook up again. And I think this whole, when sex is thought of as recreational rather than sacred or spiritual or the most intimate you can be with another human, then we've lost our relationship with ourselves. Because when sex is recreational, then it's no longer a way to intimately connect with another. It's just a way to hook up so you won't be alone. So you can get your physical release and move on. Except that's not how women are wired. And I don't think it's how men are wired. I think it's a way we want to think we are, but it's not the way we're created.
Mhm.
Well, how do we get to this point where sex is so recreational nowadays?
I think that's a really good question, Christian. I think a big part of it is is variety. Porn use is the highest it's ever been. In fact, a large part of my practice are guys who are in, 23 and under who are addicted to porn, and they can no longer perform or get an erection with a normal girlfriend. And it is mostly men. It is the worst addiction happening to young men right now than anybody wants to talk about or address. They give these guys testosterone with their girlfriend. They get them all jacked up on all kinds of stuff. But the bottom line is, when you give anyone that kind of variety and you overdose the level of variety on the internet, because it doesn't matter how it comes in, the brain chemistry changes. And we have such good evidence that the more you date, the less happy you are in marriage. So it's people go, I just want to go out and date. I want to date as many people as I can. No, you don't. Not if you want a healthy marriage.
Right.
Because you'll never be happy in that, because the brain, the endorphins kick in when there's variety. And any bad time in your marriage, you're going to go back to that time. Maybe there's somebody else. Maybe there's something better. And so much so that the brain chemistry is all distorted. And because of this, women know that guys like variety. Women have lost the ability to say no, to set a boundary. They're trying to equal the scoreboard. Well, if he does this, I can do this. And so they go in a hookup with anybody. They give it away, and then they call the guy a pig because he doesn't call them back. He took sex, he took what they offered, and then he's a pig or a dog because he didn't call back. Well, what are you? You didn't respect yourself. You didn't know who you were. Your relationship with yourself was not healthy. So you did something that was against how you were really felt was best, or you just aren't even feeling anymore. And there are a lot of people who are very numb. They are disconnected from their feeling. It's too painful.
Right. Wow, that's some pretty good stuff.
Yeah,
it's intense. I know, it's very intense. Like it's just so, when you work with this, you start seeing patterns. And I think if I had any advice for people, it would be, make sure before you get in a relationship that you are well in yourself. That no matter what happens, this person is not in control, or, you can love them, but you can live without them too. And you can be strong, and you can be yourself. And
yes, absolutely.
I'm going to plug this in really quick.
Okay.
But that is definitely something that I think we as a generation need to hear, because like I said earlier, it's always the other person's fault and all this. And even with the pornography issue, you've got guys who are like, well, I want her to sing like this girl. I want her to have the hair of this girl. I want her to have the boobs of this one. I want her to have the teeth of this one. I want her to be able to cook like this one. And then you wonder why you're not happy in a relationship or marriage. No one can live up to that.
Well, it's not only that, you've already taken a woman apart and objectified her into body parts. So it shows me that once a couple has sex, one of the reasons I tell couples, I'm a big believer that you should wait to have sex. And I would love to say until you're married, but there's a lot of people who are getting married very late now. And that may not be reasonable to wait until you're 35 or 40 to have sex. That's something people have to decide. I can't decide for them. But when you're in a new relationship and you have sex, I want couples to understand you have reached probably the only depth you're going to have of this relationship. Because sex is a wonderful tool, but if it comes too soon, you lose emotional intimacy that didn't have time to really take root. And so
Mhm.
when couples say, you know, we connect, we're good sexually, but our conversation is so superficial, I'll ask them, when did you have sex? Well, the first night, you know, the third time I saw him, which was 2 weeks or whatever. Then I'm like, well, you know, that's why. I mean, in my life, I really do preach, when you're dating someone, wait at least 6 months. And by then you should have a feeling like this is a person I really choose to be with. I'm monogamous. I'm at a point in my life where I can have sex with them. I think the relationship is really deep. They understand me. We can talk about stuff. I think that's a good amount of time. But when I tell couples that, they're like, 6 months? Are you insane? They'll be gone by then because they can get sex from whoever they want. Yes, but they can't have intimate sex with you.
We would even,
And
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, that's the bottom line. But along with that, I'm thinking of sex as being very sacred and intimate. Sex is not something that I promote recreational. I don't think that's where it should be. I don't think it's healthy. I think once you do that, it can be recreational after you're married and or after you're committed, but it shouldn't be used as something you do at the end of a date for a good time.
We would even argue here that it's purely after marriage. If you
Yeah.
gotta wait, if you have to wait that long, you just have to wait. We're so wired to be um, immediate gratification that,
Mm-hmm.
oh, 6 months. Oh, I gotta wait till I'm married. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you got,
Right.
yeah. Why would you not if it's something you view as sacred? You know,
Right.
because if I'm doing it with this person, then oh, I broke up. We dated. How many people do you know that dated for over a year? They're like, oh yeah, I had 4 girlfriends. They were each a year. Well, I waited a couple months. He's connected with all those people,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, you don't even have to, like, here with us, like, what you're saying, we're in total agreement. We don't think that should, we don't even think it should happen before marriage, even though it does. We still think that the standard should still
Mm-hmm.
be where the standard is. You know
Yeah.
what I
Yeah,
mean?
and I go so far as like if women tell me, well, this guy's not going to wait that long. I'm like, well, better you know. Then he's then
Right.
he's then he's looking for body parts. He's looking for sex. He's not looking for an intimate relationship.
Right.
Why do you want to get involved with that? You're going to call him a insulting name after he has sex with you and doesn't call back. So just don't put yourself through that grief. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people want it both ways. They want to be adored. They want their man to desire them, but yet they also want them to cherish them. And the only way you do that is to hold off with sex.
Right. Absolutely. Because a man, if he really wants you, he's not gonna mind waiting.
See,
If he
I
really
keep
wants you.
saying that. More women have told me that is not true. And I'm like, I really think it's who you're looking at. I really think you're giving them vibes or something that I don't know. I've seen a lot of women that will go out and purposely dress a certain way or act a certain way and like they're willing to have sex even though they tell me, well, I want to wait with sex. And so I think what they are is they're confused. They
Mm.
do desire to wait for sex, but only if the guy will back that up. Because more than that, they want a guy, they want a partner. But the bottom line to that is if that partner hurts you, then it's one more insult to your heart. It's probably going to make you feel more negative about men. And the truth is, you had a responsibility in that too. It wasn't just him, it's what you put out there. And I think owning your responsibility for what you're putting out and not blaming you, but you owning it is very important as an emotionally mature person.
Mhm. Yeah, I think one thing that you said that was really important about that is like that a lot of women don't believe that there's a guy that will wait that long and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think the values come in. Because
Right.
we had a lady that came on and she's older and she's like, well, a guy at this age, I don't think he'll wait. And it's like, well, at the end of the day, what do you want more?
Mm-hmm.
Is it more important for you to get a husband or a boyfriend, or is it more important for you to live out the values that you see as important
Mm-hmm.
in with your relationship with God? Which is more important?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think people, men and women, tend to, but in this case, it's usually the guys pushing the sex, or the
Mm-hmm.
women thinking that the guys want the sex, and so they're willing to compromise their values
Mm-hmm.
for a possible relationship. And I don't think that should ever be the case.
Right.
Right.
Well, and I think too that people forget because of social media, they want to be liked. They like the endorphin rush of
Mhm.
getting a like, and God doesn't give them that. You know, he doesn't give them any likes. He doesn't do anything like that. So when they're feeling bad about themselves or lonely, they forget that they're a child of God and they go back to what is more immediate, which is social media. Even though social media, everybody can tell you it's destructive, it's got it's got tactics in it that are controlled by an algorithm and don't care 2 cents about you. It's a
Right.
business. It's
Right.
strictly to keep you sucked in. They, at that point, they're desperate. And that desperation comes, I believe, because they are not comfortable in themselves. They're lost or they feel ungrounded without a person,
Mm,
without being told that they're loved by a man or some man cherishing them.
right. And we have a guest person who wants to hop on and ask a
Okay.
question. So for everybody that's hopping on, hop on, ask a question, because sometimes people will hop on. They're like, I just want to say this, and then they just want to kind of get on the roll and start talking. We
Yeah.
want to give Mary Jo the opportunity to answer your questions. So when you guys hop on, ask a question, maybe even ask a follow-up question, and then let her answer and hop off so that the next person come on. But for everybody that has questions that's typing, just click the camera icon. You can hop on and ask your question so she can answer it live for you.
Oh, what
So
fun.
sometimes there's a little
I've
delay.
never done this part. This is fantastic.
Hey, how you
Hey,
guys doing?
Hey, what's
great.
going on?
Good. It's my first time on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey,
Where are you from? Let
I'm
everybody
from.
know where you're
I'm
from.
originally from Minnesota, but I live in Dallas, Texas.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I'm 29. So I just want to give you that quick little biography. I'm 29. I was raised in a Christian home, but my question for you, because I actually waited to get married, being the one that waited for marriage, to have sex. The thing is, I've only been with one woman because I chose that. The thing is, I wanted to ask this question to follow up with that. My question is, being the guy that I am that waited, seeing the situation I was in, even though we didn't work out, it's really hard for many women to believe men are waiting, and I don't know why they don't believe it. But my question to you is, if I make this clear, pretty much I want to ask you, with women with multiple partners, I've always asked myself, is it going to be harder for them to be faithful to the guy that has not been around multiple women? Because the charge. In my
Mhm.
case, I have not been with no other women like that, so I wouldn't have to worry about fighting the urge to go be with somebody else because I've seen the results just studying the nature of sex and how it affects our mind. Like you said, pornography releases the
Mhm.
chemicals that shouldn't be releasing, only meant for one
Right.
person. So I want to ask you that, doctor, if that's what I should call you by, Dr. Jane.
You can call
I'm
me
just
Mary
okay.
Jo.
Mary Jo. Okay, Mary
Yeah.
Jo. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Thank you. So with that
Hmm.
question, it's just with women with multiple partners, do you think it's harder for them to be with the man and the one they're choosing to think that's best for them based on experience, or is it just a harder? Is it harder for them versus the man picking them? I'm guessing my question is I'm trying to make it sense. It's
Yeah.
just the
No,
first time being on
I
live.
I think I understand your question. And the answer is
Okay.
most women look at how the guy shows his love. So if you are really good at showing her love in ways that make her feel love, because everybody's a little different what they like. Some people like more touching, some people like more cuddling, some people like more like service, like fixing stuff at the house. If you can identify those things, what really makes her feel loved, I think she will cherish you and love you. Because the majority of women are not wired to be with a lot of men. They're just not. They want one guy, they want to feel secure, they want to feel safe, and they want to feel protected. When a guy has their back, that just makes a woman feel totally loved. So if you can demonstrate those things, I think that will not affect her ability to stay with you and love you.
Gotcha. And follow-up question. So with the women today in the society, I've seen a lot of modernism being pushed. Do you
Mm-hmm.
think the modernism for the women today, do you think they'll ever understand that traditional values trumps over the modern view for marriage?
Well, I don't know what traditional values include for you, but I do think that it is extremely unfair that women do 87% of all the household chores, and that leaves a measly 13% for men or a housekeeper if they're lucky enough. So if I were a guy, I would forget the modernization and the traditional household stuff, and I would have a list, and the first thing I would ask this woman is, how can we make this load fair so we both can carry part of the load, so we both have time to focus on the relationship and raising the children? Because I get really lost when guys say, I like a traditional family values. That usually means, hey, honey, will you cook? Hey, honey, will you get me a beer? Hey, honey, the house needs vacuuming. We need to pick up. And that is not modernism. That's a guy controlling, getting his way, entitlement. I call that entitlement. So, and women complain about this, but many women don't advocate for themselves, and they don't tell the guy up front, listen, I cannot carry this whole load. You have got to do your share. Does that make
Understandable.
sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
It makes
You're
sense.
welcome.
And
You're
every
welcome.
time I get the opportunity, I don't know if you know about this book, but this book says kind of exactly what she said about that.
Okay.
It's like it's important to do that. But just before you hop off, I just want to clarify, when you were talking about the modern versus traditional thing, were you talking about more from a sexual perspective, like traditional in the sense of like not throwing away sex to everybody, or were you talking about kind of what she was talking about, like chores and stuff like that? Because
Uh, the sex part. Yeah,
okay,
just for
sex.
traditional. Yeah, traditional values for sex.
Okay.
Oh, you like, so you're saying like monogamy?
Yes.
Yeah, I think most, if you get married, monogamy must be talked about and it must be followed. Because if you don't have respect and faithfulness and trust that your partner is going to stay faithful to you, you don't have a relationship. You
Mhm.
basically have a hookup with benefits,
Mhm.
maybe a house together.
Yeah, maybe. Or an apartment.
Yeah,
Maybe.
or something like that.
Thanks for hopping on, man.
Thank
Yeah, that
you.
was a
Good
great
question.
question. That was a great two questions or three, however many it was.
Thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, we've got another person who wants to hop on real quick. Let me know when you guys can see her. Sometimes there's a delay for me. You guys
Yeah.
can see it
Yeah.
before
Looks like it's trying. There she is.
Hey, hey, what's your name and where are you
Hello.
from?
Hey, my name is Jessica. I'm from Pasadena, Texas.
Hey,
Okay.
Yes, I actually follow Mary Jo. I've been following her for years, and I love, love, love her.
Oh, thank you.
She gives the greatest advice, and I'm talking about, I'm 34, and so I've been following her for like a good 8 years, 8 or 9 years.
Wow.
So definitely follow her on social media, her podcast, everything. But yes, she's awesome, amazing. She gives the best advice. I
Oh,
just wanted
thank
to
you.
say that.
Oh, thank you. That's really
But,
sweet.
but my question is, okay, like I said, I'm 34. Um, have been single, I'd say almost 4 years, coming out of a 6.5 year relationship, unhealthy relationship. So after leaving that, I would think I'm still single, going on 4 years, 3.5 years. And so recently, I don't date anymore. I don't. It's very exhausting. So I pretty much don't date. If I was, I guess my question is, should I put myself out there, or should I just let it happen naturally as far as like meeting someone?
I think I would, it depends. If you want to, if you get ready to meet people and you feel kind of rusty, like you're not sure you can talk to people again and you're confused about what you're really looking for, I would online date because your chances of meeting someone.
Um, I know what I'm looking for. I pretty much know what I'm looking for. So when I was dating, I was not finding it at all. Um, I met a couple of friends, but then as far as like my core values and my, morale and things that I was seeking from people, I just wasn't looking for it. And
Mhm.
so it's exhausting. Dating is exhausting.
It is exhausting and
So,
it can be very frustrating. The best marriages that I have gone to lately, they met through a church, or they met through a singles group in the church, or they met
mhm,
through a project they were both very committed to. And I like that because whenever you're involved in something bigger than yourself, like worship of God, or your faith, growing your faith, or working on a project that you feel strongly about that's going to benefit others, you're happy. And it shows on your face. You're a different kind of person. And when you put those vibes out, you attract like-minded people. And I think when a relationship starts on something you both value, that's a great place to
mhm.
start. Because you should never be
Same.
with someone that you don't share at least 4 to 5 values with. If they
Mhm.
disagree with what you value, and you find this out in the first 3 dates, let them go. Let them go gently, but they're not for you.
Oh, okay, definitely, definitely. So, I mean, I do practice Reiki, so I meditate also, and I go to sessions and stuff like that. So, I mean, I'm in tune with that.
Oh,
So,
that's great.
just waiting, I guess, waiting for my time, I guess. I
Well, keep
basically,
investing. Keep investing in yourself and growing that person. Start doing,
definitely
you know,
every day. I set
yeah.
my affirmations, all that. I do all that
Great.
good
Yeah, you've
stuff.
got a really good energy. So keep putting that out there because there's people that you're meant to touch. And we heal people when we connect with them. So think of it more as I got to get out there and
Mhm.
connect with others. And that's because I don't know how God is using me. I mean, I know how I want to meet other people, but God's using all of us. And He puts us, He encourages us to get in situations, but if we get down or we get lazy or we decide we don't want to, we just are sick of it or whatever, many times that can lead to a negative mindset, and then we need to reevaluate what we want in life.
True, true. I get it.
So
Yes.
I have
Well,
I have
thank
I
you.
have
Thank you so
Oh, you're
much.
welcome.
I have a question,
Mhm.
a follow-up question
Sure.
for you. Um, Obviously,
Mhm.
and I'm curious how Mary Jo will answer as well. What I remember you said, what you're looking for. what are you looking for? And then where are you looking for?
I am the type of person is just basically, I'm a fun, open-minded person, very loyal. Integrity is a must. And that's probably the top three is just loyalty, integrity, and like to share the same sense of fun, you know, thrive on life. That's basically what I'm looking for. I've just ran into too many people with like issues. And not to say I didn't have issues back then. Like I said, I was coming out of a 6.5-year relationship that was very unhealthy, very toxic traits, you know. But when that was over, I learned a lot about myself, and like Mary Jo's, you know, podcast, everything, like, you know, I'm on TED Talks and just grasping all this information and just soaking it all in to learn more about myself and more about people, about men, you know, just about people in general. So as far as what I'm looking for, I'm just looking for somebody who is just down to earth, honest, and the somewhat same values that I'm looking for, which will eventually lead to marriage.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I was just curious because everybody.
I own marriage, right? I'm a marriage advocate, and I own it. Like I would never date just to date. I tell people I have fun with it. Be relaxed. You know, the main thing is you meet people. But honestly, well, I've been married forever. So if I were to date again, I may change how I date. I can't imagine dating again. But I think if you've never been married and you want that in your life, I think the more honest you are and the more you advocate for it, it helps you keep yourself sacred. If you say, I want to be married, and then if a guy, like you meet somebody and then on the second or third date they want to have sex, if you like them and if you see them as a potential partner, tell them no, because I see you as someone I really care about, and I would like to explore if we can actually make it. And if we end up together, I'm never going to forget that we had sex this early. And I want, if I ever did have sex with you, I want it to be sacred. Men really respect that. Now, it doesn't mean he won't go out and find somebody else. But that's, if you... I'm also
along in my journey, I'm practicing abstinence as well. Mm-hmm. So you said something earlier, and I'm kind of guilty. I know I'm putting myself out there, but talking about pornography. You said something that kind of struck me, and it's making me think now, because I mean, being single for this long, I do dabble into that. I wouldn't say often, but I do. And just, I guess with saying that, you got me thinking, basically just like maybe cutting that out of my life, you know, because I'm big on cutting out bad, unhealthy habits, you know, in my life. So maybe that's something that I should maybe evaluate. It's just, and maybe just take the time to kind of like go walking, or like go every time I think of, because it's hard. I'm not gonna lie, it's hard. It's hard. It's very difficult, especially when I'm around, you know, certain people, and it just, you feel the testosterone, and it's like, you know, it's just hard. It's very, I'm dealing with a lot. I'm sorry, I'm dealing with a lot.
Yeah, well, it is hard. I mean, I think it's a temptation, and pornography for couples that have sexual problems, we actually prescribe, you know, mild pornography or love stories. Watch together. But when you watch it by yourself and you're on it all the time, it changes your brain chemistry. And the studies have mostly been done with men, because men are men are using porn the most, and it's just like it's nonstop. It's become a vice. It's like having a drink or a hit, a joint. They just go on, and what happens is then in a real relationship, they don't know how to, they can't get an erection, they can't talk to their partner, they can't open up because it's the same partner. Anybody can screw somebody different every day and have a great, what they think is a great sex life, but that is not
Mm-hmm.
intimacy.
Mm-mm.
And that is
No,
not,
definitely.
and that is never the depth of what sex can be if you keep it
A
spiritual.
relationship, calls for spiritual connection, and
Right.
I would even
Mm-hmm.
say, and we actually had a couple videos about pornography
Mm-hmm.
a few months ago, and one of the big things is that none of like the porn videos is ever any sort of like, yeah, these two people, like the story is never like these two people got married, they love each other,
Yeah.
and now it's always like the pizza boy showed up to like a sorority, party or something, and then he's having sex with them, and it's always surface level. It's always, the girl with the biggest breasts, or like
Mm-hmm.
long Larry, and it's like
Yeah.
when you when you have
And her brain is empty.
huh?
What?
I said, and her brain is empty. I'm just joking.
Oh. So then you get with a real woman, and maybe she does kind of look like that, or you get with a regular guy,
Yeah.
and then he pulls his pants down, and you're like, oh, that's nothing compared to what I've been watching, and so you're
Right.
never. It's like you're training your brain to never be
Brain. Yeah.
happy.
Now
Yeah.
you're
You know what
never
I mean?
satisfied, right?
Right.
Never
Mhm.
satisfied.
Well, and those guys score really high on depression. And so then they're, for when I work with them, they not only have to have all these testosterones and all these hormones, but then we have to do their mental health. And so they end up on antidepressants many times for the rest of their life because it screwed up the serotonins and the endorphin connection in the brain. And that doesn't go away. So they started out like this is, everybody used to say, well, I did Playboy in my day, but Playboy was a magazine. And when you're reading a book or seeing a magazine, it's slower. It's a slower pace. This is just like boom, 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 boom. And the brain it's so inoculated. It's just so overwhelmed that's what they believe is really messing up the chemistry. So
And many times, a lot of people have like 13 tabs, like just in case, like,
right.
and so it's not even.
That's not me. I'm just saying.
Because I was reading a study about this, and they were actually talking about some people have had to like taper off, where they literally prescribe people to like, they're like, watch it, but just stick to one video and watch
Mm-hmm.
that, and then eventually go to like taper back to a magazine, and then eventually it's just nothing. It's
Mm-hmm.
not there anymore. But
Right.
when you've got like 50 tabs open, and you've got, I got a section for this group, a section for this group, and
Mm-hmm.
you're just kind of vegging out on.
I do my best to keep myself distracted for sure. I mean, if my kids aren't enough, then, and then work on top of that. So,
Mm-hmm.
any free time I have, I do garden a little bit or just go jogging, take a walk at a
Mm-hmm.
park, so.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Thank you
Yes,
for
thank
hopping
you.
on and
Thank you.
asking
Yes.
the questions. And we want to appreciate you for being so vulnerable on a live like this. We appreciate that.
No problem. No problem. It was
So
nice talking
honored.
with y'all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's very
Thank
brave.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So if anyone else would like to join, just click the camera icon. You can ask your question. We've got about 15 minutes left. But while we're kind of on the topic of, relationships, getting back out there, what do you say? Because this is one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, and I feel like it leads into it really well. How many times have you seen someone that maybe have like been hurt from a bad relationship? Like she was saying, like a 6-year
Mm-hmm.
relationship that was devastating and damaging. Do you see um, do you see people in getting in their new relationships automatically having that defense mechanism up and then projecting onto that new person they're with?
You can create, that's a really good question, because you can create what happened in your past relationship into a new relationship. There's no doubt. I think that what happens is because you're so used to your responses, more than anything, when your partner says something, you go into an automatic mode almost of how you responded in the past. And when when you respond like that, then even if that wasn't their intention, they start acting more that way. And when people say every one of the guys I date or every one of the girls I date has this, it's usually because of what you projected. You know, she's really smart, the girl that was just on here, because she was in a bad relationship. She understands it was toxic. It sounds like she did some work around that, and she hasn't gotten back in a relationship yet. And that takes a lot of strength to just not go back into one and think you can do better. So my guess is she realizes she still has some leftover grief work that she has to work on. But it's very important that you empty yourself from any of what happened. Like, you own your baggage when you get out of a relationship. You really seek to try and understand what happened before you get in another relationship, so you don't choose that familiar pattern.
Mm-hmm. I've actually know somebody personally that she actually started going to one of my family members. She started going to therapy for herself
Mm-hmm.
just because she realized, hey, my boyfriend is a good guy, but I was dating a bad guy. And I
Mm-hmm.
started projecting these things, assuming his intention is this, his intention is that. And just, every now and then when we see her, just from those little bits of therapy sessions, we're seeing like, man, she's not so quick tempered like she used to be. She's not like
Mm-hmm.
triggered like she used to be. And would you say that that like, why is it? I don't see a lot of people taking the responsibility, realizing, wait a minute, the world's not all red. I'm just wearing red shades. Oh, now I can
Yeah.
see. There's a whole plethora of colors. Why do you think it's so hard for us to do that when it comes to relationships?
I think we get back into a relationship too fast. Most of the time, when I see people carrying that attitude, or they begin to believe that all guys are this way or all women are this way, it's because they didn't really heal. They didn't take responsibility. So it was easier for them to cast the blame on their partner. And then what they do is interesting. They classify all people of that gender as the same, or all people of that ethnic group as the same. And I've heard so many people say that. Well, I dated this guy, and every guy is like that. I mean, I dated two other guys and they did the same thing. And I'm thinking probably that was projected into the relationship by her or by him.
Mm.
So, and that happens more with women, because I think for women to heal when they're going through a terrible breakup, other women come around and tell them stories. Whereas guys are more likely to say, hey, just let it go, bro. She was crazy. She was crazy. Let's go out and get hammered and you just
Yeah,
need to get
Go get
hooked
another one.
up. You need to get hooked up with someone else.
You're definitely from Wisconsin if you're saying
Yes.
that.
And then
Cam-
women will say, "Oh my God, that's so hurtful." You know what? That happened to the same, that happened to one of my friends. Let's eat some ice cream, and they'll just talk crap about the guy all night and how all guys are that way. So it's just a difference in how people heal after. Men actually grieve a loss of a relationship more intensely than women do, which I find very fascinating. In every bit of psychological research, men grieve it much deeper, but men will have sex with another person much quicker than a woman will.
Why do you think that
Women
is?
women will not, and this is what makes women feel more devalued and like the guy really didn't care, because he will hook up just to get a release or to feel better about his ego, but he will grieve her longer than she will.
I mean,
She grieves and it's done.
that kind of explains the guy that after the breakup he goes to the gym and gets swole. You know what I mean?
Yep,
Starts listening to like the red pill conversations.
yep, yep.
Yeah,
It's
and
so true.
when you're really honest about it, a lot of the red pill conversations just of guys that are hurt.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I see men's faces during certain times. I work mostly with men in my counseling sessions. And I'll hear a guy talking or bragging about all these women hitting on him. But when I see him, the guy looks sad. Like
Mm.
you can just tell and I don't know how many porn, like Playboy clubs you guys have been to, but I did some research in them. And when I went in them, most of the guys sitting around there drinking just looked miserable. They didn't look like, if you go to a strip club and you watch a group of women, they're really having fun. Like they're usually laughing because it's out of sorts for them. Like
Mm.
they're going to go out and celebrate, but it's not really turning them on. Guys go there to just have their sexual pleasure or their pleasure centers turned on. It's like visual. And so guys go there for a different reason than women, but they look sad when you see them. And the research, like we had to count their facial features during like a hour and a half span. It was so boring because we're looking at all these guys in the club and looking at their faces and different body language, and it was really incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's interesting because we actually had someone come on and argue the opposite, saying like, no, men and women are exactly the same in that. And like you said, it is very interesting because men are going to get sexual pleasure, and I believe the reason they're going to get the sexual pleasure is because they're trying to forget pain.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to escape reality.
Yeah.
So the face on a guy getting a lap dance isn't going to be like, wah! It's going to be,
Yeah.
it's going to be like, I'm just escaping reality.
Right. He's numbing out. He's
Right.
basically just detaching. And
Right.
he's like, and if they're not getting a lap dance and they're just sitting there with a beer, the look on their face is just like, I think they feel so alone. I didn't talk to them. We were just looking at body language, and we didn't want any subjective material. We just wanted what we saw with their body language. And I didn't ask them, but they just look like this is because I do think most men love being connected with someone and in a relationship. Men love being adored too and cherished. And the reason they don't say how they feel is they don't want to start a fight. Guys will live in a crappy marriage for much longer than a woman will. Women instigate more than 80% of all the divorces.
Really?
Absolutely, because women don't tolerate feeling unloved in a relationship. Guys, if they have kids, they'll just do it. It's a pattern. They don't want to change. They're like, just stay here. I don't want to ruffle the feathers. I don't want to bring this up. Why create a big hassle?
Mm-hmm. I actually have a theory about that, and maybe you can touch on it because, like I said, it's just a theory on my understanding. You've done a lot more research than I have. But in the past, like maybe before this past century, 2 centuries before, and then past, it was a lot of things were unfairly tilted towards whatever men want. And then women just had to put up with it because, if a guy's angry, he's going to hit her. And there's no police saying, hey, that's wrong, because they're doing it, And so at that time, they just kind of put up with it and dealt with whatever the guy wanted. And I think the pendulum has kind of swung to the other extreme, not landed in the middle, but maybe gone to the other extreme where I think, and this is just my observation, maybe you can let me know if it's right or not, but from TV shows, from music, from media, everything, there's this idea of happy wife, happy life. And a lot of women have this understanding, and men too, that like it's your job, it's her job to be happy. It's your job to make her happy. It's her job to be happy. And if she's not happy, then there's something you're doing wrong. And so whether it's pushed on by media or something like that, I think that there's this idea that, whenever there's a breakup or something happens, it's always, what did he do?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are that media dumbs down men, but that men are instigating it because men have this whole mantra that I'm just a simple male. Like men are afraid or have been taught they've not been socialized to express their feelings and to get those feelings validated because its feelings are considered feminine. And so if a guy were to say, I feel hurt, or I feel vulnerable, or I feel scared, society said, what are you? What are you, a wussy? What, you're not a man? And so we raised a whole generation of men who weren't comfortable with what they were feeling. So they just suppressed it, but they acted it out. And when they finally blew, they would hit or they would, bang a wall or do something destructive to their relationship. So now we're saying, you know what? We do want to know how men feel. But there's that whole group of women that say, I want to know how you feel, but I don't want you to be a wussy. Like, I still want a man. Well, a real man can express how he feels. And I think where we're grappling now is there's some men that are very good at expressing themselves and saying how they feel. And for those relationships, they're rich. They're very intimate. They're very connected. But for those men that are still the stoics, they're not opening up, they're not talking, those marriages are in a lot of trouble because women notoriously, they have their own money now. And the courts are very pro-woman, especially if there's children. And so basically, if a guy wants his children and he wants his life the way it is, he has to step up because women instigate the majority of the divorces. Now, women may say, well, it's because he ran around or he was unfaithful or he wouldn't work. Whatever the reason, it doesn't matter. It comes down to this. Women know they don't have to live like this anymore. And women are incredible networkers. So when they're not happy or when they think their marriage, they're not getting treated well, they talk to other women. And it is a unbelievably tight network that men have not established yet. Men have bros, they have a couple of guy friends, but those guy friends aren't going to come and sit with them when when his wife is losing him. Those guys are going to try and be masculine and help him deal with his pain in the way they were taught, which is, let's go have a couple beers. You need to get laid. All these
Right.
things that don't work for a relationship.
Right.
So that's more what I see is happening with, we need to stop making feelings feminine. Feelings are feelings. They're not right or wrong. They just are. Every man and woman has feelings. And it's what constitutes a healthy person, an emotionally healthy person, is someone who can express their feelings and get their needs met at that time. So the better able we raise men to say, I feel sad or I feel rejected, and for their partner to validate that, I'm sorry you have to feel that way. We're going to start healing them. So it won't be a thing of, how do I get my man to open up? This is my top question, by the way. On social, Mary Jo, how do you get a man to open up? Well, I know several things. That man they're with has been taught that feelings are feminine. And so he has suppressed them so deep. So he's probably somewhat rude in the way he loves her.
Now, do you think, this is another conversation that I brought up, and we'll make this really quick because I know you got to get off in a little bit.
Yeah.
But when it comes to being honest about how you feel, right? In the modern dating scene, there's this idea that, like, you need to play your cards right, because the guy that just says, hey, I like you, you know, or I feel this way, and blah, 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 she pushes that guy away. And the guy that says things like that she wants to hear, that she would rather hear, those are the guys that she gives an opportunity to. And so
Right.
I think that sometimes that dating culture creates an idea of, this woman is used to being, I don't want to say lied to, but not told the truth to about how he really feels. And then when they're in a marriage or a relationship, and then someone says, hey, this is how I feel. Well, no one's ever told me how they feel and said that, because that makes me feel bad. I don't like hearing something I don't like. And then that's when sometimes that narcissist, he was a narcissist, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. How do you see that playing out with the dating landscape kind of, do you see what I'm asking there?
Yeah, I do. I think more important that when you're dating someone, you remember that for the woman, she's been taught, she has been raised to believe the best she's ever going to get treated is when she's dating. So when you tell her the truth or your truth or how you're feeling, you have to remember that if she views that as negative, it's more than likely because she's fearful that if you're doing this, if you're talking to her like this when you're dating, imagine what you would be like if she was really with you. So I think women go into that mode a lot and very quickly. And also, when you tell someone the truth, when a guy tells someone the truth, what he oftentimes does is he doesn't have the emotional or the verbal intelligence or sources. Women's verbal centers are much bigger, and they use them a lot. And so they're also usually more emotionally attuned and intelligent than guys, especially when they're dating. So a guy will say, well, I shouldn't have to soften my truth. You don't have to soften it, but you do have to say it in a way that you can, she's not a guy, she's a woman.
Right.
And so how you talk to a woman is different. Just like how a woman talks to a man is different. And the two miscommunicate because of that. Like when a guy is talking to me about his wife, she oftentimes will react and say, well, that's mean. And I will interpret for him. And I will say, well, what he's really saying is this. And then she'll go, oh, okay. Because see, we're used to hearing how our gender says stuff. And you're saying stuff like, this is your truth. how you would tell Christian, but you couldn't tell that to your wife in the same way because
Right.
it would come across different.
Right.
Because there's a gentleness when you love someone in that way. There's a gentleness. Although dating, I don't know how much you would have that. I hear guys say really offensive things sometimes. I mean, I'm out and, sometimes I'll be waiting for a friend and I'll go at the counter and guys will start coming up and just talking. And sometimes I'm like, okay, I'll even say I'm just going to overlook that.
Like talking
Because,
to you?
yeah. They'll just start, like saying stuff and
Like
it's
what?
just
What do you-
like,
Yeah, what do they say? I'm kind of curious.
yeah. Well, just I don't know what their intention is, if they're trying to impress me or whatever, but I just kind of look at them and they're probably like, well, that's a weird response, but I'm trying not to hurt them, but at the same time, I want them to know, okay, that is probably not something you should say in the future. Because in my community, people kind of know who I am. So I think they try to say something that I don't know. It's just,
Like they would say stuff like,
Respectful.
"Hey, tell me what I'm thinking. You're a
yeah,
psychologist."
or they'll come up and say, oh, just a person I need to talk to. I need to unload a lot of crap. What do you think of all these people? Like I was coming in traffic and, they're just like on their phone and, I just want to yell out the window, but I know that's not, something I should do. But that is my truth. And I'm like, I mean, they have kind of a simplified version of it, but or
Well,
they'll try to be complimentary, but they don't understand a lot of times. Like you can say sweet things to women, but a woman like me is always going to like someone who is smart. Nobody's going to get me with a compliment because I've heard most compliments. But if it's someone that's smart, or I can see an area like they're thinking. Now see, that's intriguing to me, and I would be more likely to want to entertain that, like to talk to them. So I think a lot of times you see a girl with big breasts or big butt, or you're objectifying her body and you say you're the most beautiful girl here, or you're so beautiful. That may work on that person depending on where their self-esteem is, but it might backfire on you because they may have heard that women can't get compliments all the time. Like our friends compliment us. And that's a big difference. If you compliment a guy, I tell a guy I really like his shirt, he'll wear that damn shirt every day for the next 2 weeks when I see him. And I'm like, okay, this is weird.
right.
Whereas you tell a woman I like that shirt, she's like, oh, thanks. But she'll have a different shirt on next time because women are used to hearing it. But what a lot of women like, and I'm one of those women, I like when a man is smart and he entertains, things that are, thought-provoking or, make you intrigued. Now, that's exciting. And
Right.
and I just think a lot of guys are missing that. Well, for sure, if you're porn addicted, you would have no idea how to say something intelligent or
Right. You think you could just show up?
suspenseful.
You think you just show up to a sorority party with the pizza
Yeah.
box and you're gonna get it
With a
on?
box of pizza, and then I'd be like, "Wow!"
Yeah. Well, Mary Jo, thank you for your time. Thank you for hopping on, and hopefully, we're actually planning on switching over to YouTube soon, and so maybe we could do a live with you on some of these topics, like advice you would give to men and women.
That would be fantastic. I would love that because my YouTube channel is I'm really like so into that, and I love making videos, and because honestly, it's one way I can give free therapy, and most of my videos are under 10 minutes. And I really, any subscriber on there, they could tell you they are getting therapy because they can comment, and I'm so obsessive compulsive that I actually answer their comments.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah, I need medication for that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well,
Man,
thank
thank
you
you so
again
much.
for joining.
You're welcome. Thanks, you guys. And just, God bless you and just keep up the good work.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And your baby is so cute, Zach. Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, just beautiful. So she's lucky. She's got a good daddy.
Yeah. Oh, he.
Oh,
He.
it's a boy?
It's a boy. I
Oh
guess
my
he's too
God,
pretty.
I thought you had a
He's
girl.
too pretty to be a girl, huh? Oh, to be a
He is
boy, huh?
too pretty. He is too pretty. I tell you, he's just gorgeous.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good
We'll
genetics, I
raise him
guess.
right.
That's
Yeah.
right.
We're gonna try to. Well,
Yeah.
thank you again for hopping on.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.